And again, welcome. This meeting is hosted by CCRA, the Registered Community Organization for Center City. Many thanks to Tavis Oliver, who's going to help me keep out of trouble with Zoom program, and he's going to be helping me with the questions later on. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to provide an opportunity for public comment on the proposed development at 2012 to 2018 Chestnut Street. In 2016, the Philadelphia Housing Authority selected Altera Properties Real Capital Management Group together to redevelop the long vacant former PHA headquarters for a new mixed-use building with ground floor retail, market rate apartments, and workforce housing. I would like to review the format of tonight's meeting as a way of introducing all of the parties involved who have got us to this point. First of all, the CCRA board last February formed a task force consisting of Ben Zuckerman and Charles Robin, both here tonight as co-chairs, myself, Tim Kerner, and David Rose. That group has met with a development team consisting of Adam Labor from Blank Rome, land use attorney, who will be leading the discussion, Leo Adamondo, managing partner, Altera Property Group, again, John Ray, managing partner, Rail Capital Management, Calvin Jeremiah, president and CEO of the Philadelphia Housing Authority, Henry Sullivan, vice president of acquisitions, Altera Property Group, and also Jonathan Bro, principal, JKRP Architects, who will be presenting the design tonight. Just a few words about how we got to this point before I give this show over to the development team. Our task force met with the development team over a span of almost 12 months now to refine the design. The project would have required an ordinance to be built, but instead all agreed that an ordinance backed by, a variance. We would have required a variance to be built, but instead we all agreed to an ordinance backed by a tailored community development agreement. We thought that would serve the needs of the community and the developer both. The design and the plans for the project have been refined as a result, in which the development team can describe. Tonight, the development team presentation will be first led by a brief introduction from Altera, and then Adam Laver's overview of the facts. Then we will look at the design, and then Adam again will tell us about the features of the community development agreement and the ordinance. Once the presentations are complete, we will take questions in the chat, as well as the community will be able to submit questions on the project up to and including January 20th on CCRA's website. You will get those details at the end of the meeting. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Leo Adamondo.
Thank you, Janice, and thank you for everyone who's in attendance tonight. And a special thanks to Ben and Charles and Rick Gross and the members of the task force or the extended task force for the work they've put in over the past several months. I wanted to just start off by giving everyone a little bit of a background, sort of I don't want to call it a history lesson, but a timeline of how we got to today, because I think it sets the stage for tonight's meeting and the presentation. This property over the years was sent or submitted, or put out to RFP by the Housing Authority on a number of occasions, I believe 3. The most recent one was in 2005. At that time, my firm, Altera Property Group, teamed up with John Ray and Real Capital Management, who will say a few words next, to submit an RFP, along with a team of RFP response, a team of consultants, architects, and the like. The premise of the project and the priority as outlined by the Housing Authority now 5 years ago was to use this legacy site that they had vacated more than a decade prior to introduce mixed income housing into Center City, which was definitely a need that they saw, a need that I think we can all agree has only grown over the past 5 years as housing affordability has become more and more of an issue. We submitted an RFP. There were, I don't know, a dozen responses, I think I was told, to the RFP. We were preliminarily selected several months later, and then it took almost a year to sort of sign the development agreement, the ground lease, and all of the paperwork with the Housing Authority. along the way, construction costs really continued to rise in Philadelphia, which put pressure on the project. And, we also had to go through HUD to do what's called a Section 108 process, which we really couldn't start until we had our arms around the actual project configuration. So one of the things that Jonathan Breaux, our architect, will walk you through is sort of the progression of how the original project was a much larger building, I think much less, design sensibility, attached to it as part of our submission, and is today, a shorter building, more setbacks, I think a much richer architectural design. And I think thanks to Tim Kerner and Janice for their input, in addition to the task force and really pushing Altera and Real Capital Management and our consultants to, to put a better foot forward on the design of the project. Where are we today? We have a building to present to you all, which has a 20% affordability component to it, is the result of 5 years worth of legal and design work. It's been through a HUD 108 process, of which CCRA and other stakeholders were a part of. That's just one of the processes you need to go through when there's a historic asset involved that was purchased originally using HUD money, many decades ago by the Housing Authority. We are a development team that is very well experienced in building mixed use multifamily in Center City, Philadelphia, and Greater Center City, Philadelphia. It's a diverse development team, and in fact, the development team, as part of its commitment to the Housing Authority, and will be inscribed in an equal opportunity employment plan or equal opportunity plan with the City of Philadelphia, which is part of the ordinance process, has even before that committed to ourselves and to the Housing Authority to execute this project in an inclusive way. There'll be significant amount of minority participation in both the contracting and the workforce of the project. And we believe the end result will be a very positive addition, not only to Chestnut Street, to Center City, to CCRA's, catchment or boundaries, however you guys define it, and provide a much needed lower cost housing solution for residents or soon to be residents of Center City, Philadelphia. To execute all of this, it requires significant time, thought, design, construction planning, zoning, community input, and eventually, legal ordinance, and then we'll go through a financing process, which in and of itself, presents certain challenges, given what it costs to construct these types of buildings in the Northeast and in Philadelphia. What the rents might have been before COVID might be today, including the richer design and including the affordability component. I just want everyone on this call to know that while this has been a long process, it's been a worthwhile one. And I think that, and I hope that at the end of this meeting, you guys will agree that this is a worthy project for this block, for this site, and as a result of a lot of input and collaboration over many years with many stakeholders, even if the intensive, CCRA collaboration input was here in the last, say, 6 to 7 months. Everyone can appreciate that we had to go through a lot of other things to even get to the point where there was something material to talk about, with you all. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Adam, I believe, who's going to talk a little bit about the legal and zoning component here, and then I think he's going to hand it off to my partner, John, so he can talk a little bit about his role in the project. And also we have with us Kelvin, who's the head of the Housing Authority, who will give the Housing Authority's vision and input on the project, and then we'll get to the actual design images that Jonathan will walk you guys through. So Adam, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Leo. Good evening, everyone. Excuse the headset here. We did a test just prior to the meeting, and the audio seemed to be much better with the air traffic controller look this evening. Thank you to everyone at CCRA who has worked on this project. Leo went through the list. I won't repeat the names. Janice had asked that I share with you the reasons, the technical reasons why we are seeking this ordinance. And I'll go through them as quickly as possible and then get right to the heart of this evening's presentation, which is the plans that everyone has been waiting for to see. The site itself, which is located, as you know, on the south side of the 2000 block of Chestnut Street, is not eligible for standard FAR or floor area bonuses that are common in our neighborhood, common within the CMX4 district in which this property is located, common in the CMX5, the high density districts. Many of the projects that we have participated in together, and I say we since I'm a card-carrying member of CCRA in addition to being counsel on this project, but many of the projects, most of the projects that have come before CCRA recently for the large-scale community meetings have been in the CMX4 and CMX5 districts. And in those instances, different than the project before you this evening, those projects have been able to take appropriate advantage of bonuses under the zoning code. Primarily bonuses that are focused on having access to 2 streets, each of which is 50 feet more in width, 50 feet or more in width. In this case, of course, you have Chestnut Street, which would qualify, but Ionic Street, which is the small street to the rear or to the south, is too small. So based on that technicality, the bonuses that most of us would presume would be available here are not. That's number one. Number two, given the size of the property and the commitment to affordable housing that you've heard about from Leo, the commitment to retail and amenity space on the ground floor, additional gross floor area was needed in the form of more units to make the project feasible. And the ordinance that we're seeking a blessing from CCRA and then approval from City Council would permit a floor area ratio, an FAR increase, that would be comparable to what you would see if bonuses were allowed in CMX 5, for example. In this case, the proposal that's contemplated includes a very important affordable housing component that meets PHA's strict standards. After Jonathan goes through the overview, you'll hear from both John and from Kelvin more on that. Next, the ordinance also addresses the parking issue, which is a issue of much discussion in our neighborhood and, quite frankly, every neighborhood in the city of Philadelphia. The zoning code allows off-site parking within 1,000 feet. A center city block, just to put this into perspective, is roughly 400 feet long. The overlay that we are proposing would allow for off-site parking to be located within 3,000 feet of the site. Another way to look at this is the Planning Commission and the Zoning Code have transit-oriented development provisions. Provisions for sections of the city, which this is not technically in, but sections of the city that are located close to transit. And in those instances, it's understood that many would be using public transportation. I think it could apply here. In those instances, the transit-oriented development might consider 2,500 to 3,500 feet an acceptable walking distance. Once again, this overlay proposes 3,000 feet. That's roughly a 10-minute walk for most. This provision would allow the parking to be off-site, and it would also protect Chestnut Street from curb cuts that would otherwise break up the pedestrian pattern or disrupt the small street to the rear, not designed for such usage. When you look at CCRA's plan for the neighborhood, this is in keeping with that. In addition, by having the off-site parking and providing for it through the ordinance and the CBA, the Community Benefits Agreement, this will allow for life along Chestnut Street where there is none right now, retail, restaurant uses perhaps at ground floor, avoiding blank walls that hinder walkability and might otherwise raise safety and security concerns. Next, the ordinance concerns a reduction in parking that would otherwise be required, since I've mentioned that the proposal is for the off-site parking. And we looked in this case at the City Planning Commission's inventory for parking. And that there is a report that's out which shows that there's many unused parking spaces in center city lots and garages, which is part of the reason why it makes sense to have off-site parking that utilizes these garages, for example, and will, in this instance, as proposed, reduce the parking requirement to 1 space for every 5 units within the building instead of 1 to 3, for example. Finally, the zoning code has certain loading provisions which were not updated during the last revision of the zoning code completely, and really don't contemplate the dense center city environment in which we choose to live. The overlay in this case, and it's a very specific tailored overlay, would remove the loading requirement to save the ground floor for retail, to preserve the walkability, rather than providing for what the zoning code currently requires, which is off-street loading for large truck sizing requirements. Just imagine Chestnut Street being broken up to fit, it's quite frankly technically impossible and not within the desire of planning or streets or CCRA. So that in a nutshell covers the ordinance, the highlights of the ordinance. And now we can turn to Jonathan to get right to the plans, and then I'll come back and we will have some additional discussion. Jonathan.
Okay, thank you. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, let me share my screen right here.
We can see your cover page.
Okay, let's go to presentation mode. Perfect. Again, my name is Jonathan Bro with JKRP Architects. So we'll run through the site right here. Okay, so as known, the site is 2012 Chestnut Street. It's on the south side of Chestnut between 20th and 21st Street. Here's a view from the top and some other aerial views. So the site consists of both the existing PHA building and the vacant lot to the west. The lots go through from Chestnut Street to Ionic Street. So these top views are views along Chestnut Street, and the bottom 3 images are views along Ionic Street. This next slide is just to kind of show the process of this development. Right, you're seeing 3 iterations. The first iteration was from 2016, was done by an architect prior to us. As you can tell, it was a very tall building. The building in the middle was the initial design that we were working on when we first presented to CCRA. It was approximately 11-story brick building, then it set back a little bit, and then the top 3 stories were a light cast stone. The building did not have a lot of articulation, and it was pretty, wasn't as appealing as the current form. And the current design, which I'll get into in much more detail following, has many more setbacks, much more intrigue, richer palette of materials, more interesting facade treatment, and is, in everyone's opinion, a better project. And and this was, again, as we iterated in the beginning, through a process of the design team and the CCRA. Okay, so again, you see the design now in context. The roof plan, the project will have several decks on it, a large common roof deck, and then some smaller roof decks on the lower levels for specific residents. Looking at the ground floor plan right now, Chestnut Street is on the top, Ionic on the bottom. The plan calls for a sizable retail space, approximately 4,800 square feet in this pink area. On the west side, The entrance to the residential will be along this lobby on the east side of the building. And then there are various package room, mail rooms, fire command center, various back of house spaces, commercial trash located within the retail space, residential trash located within the building. Both would then come out back to Ionic Street. And then back here is additional back of house electrical. The building would also have a basement mostly for back of house and mechanical and electrical space. Okay, going up to the various floor plans on the left, these are the second through fourth floor plans. Again, north is the top of the sheet. So the project consists of a variety of studios, 2 bedrooms and 1 bedroom units. There's a courtyard which is created to allow light for these internal units. On the second through fourth floors, there's amenity space, interior amenity space, and then building core on the east. You go up to the 5th and 6th floors. Again, we are just occupying kind of the full footprint of the building. The spaces, units in the middle are now longer studio type 1 bedroom units. When you get to the 7th and 9th floor, is the first iteration of the building starting to set back, which we'll show in elevations up further along. And the 2 bedroom becomes a studio. Continuing up the building, again on the 10th and 11th floors, further setbacks and terraces start to appear for the private units. On the 12th and 13th floor, again, further setbacks and terraces. And then when you get to the 14th floor, a pretty significant setback, and then a public roof deck off a public amenity space. And by public, I mean public to the occupants of the building. Here is a long view of the building in context. So here is the building along Chestnut Street, next on looking toward the west. The ground floor, the bottom 2 levels would be most likely a light cast stone or a limestone. And the cornice line is made to kind of follow the cornice line of the 2-story buildings to the east. Then going up the next 7 stories is a light brick. You can see these setbacks right here. And you can setbacks for residential here, again, setbacks here, which will have private terraces, setback at the 11th floor with terraces, and then this setback here again with a public terrace for a amenity space. The sides of the building, this dark gray material is most likely a dark cast stone, which is a high grade concrete. On the left side is the Ionic Street view. Again, this view is would be significantly obscured from what you're seeing right here, but we maintain the brick. We maintain the brick along to the 6th floor, and then when we go along the Ionic Street view, the building does no longer has the setbacks. It should also be stated that in addition to discussions with the CCRA, the setbacks were made to follow with what is known as sky plane, which is a zoning requirement that requires the building to step back as you go higher, so the building doesn't create like a cavern, or a series of buildings that create a cavern looking down the street. This is yet another view of Chestnut Street, where you can see the courtyard, which we've created, allows for light for all the units looking to the west. Further articulation of the setbacks that I've previously mentioned. And then these are pretty much straight on elevations of the project. The building is 161 feet tall to the roof, and front elevation on the left, west elevation on the right. Ionic Street elevation on the left, and the east elevation to our right again. And that is the conclusion of my presentation. I'll leave this slide up.
Thank you, Jonathan. At this point, I would like to invite John Rea, who is managing partner of Real Capital, as mentioned by Leo earlier, along with Altera. He is a partner in this project. To John, if you unmute yourself, you can share a few words. Looks like you're still on mute. Just bear with us for a moment. Well, while we're waiting for John to come back online, we could switch things out of order for a moment. And I can ask Kelvin Jeremiah, who is the president and CEO of the Philadelphia Housing Authority, if he would be kind enough to speak about PHA's interest in this property and Kelvin, your vision.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone, and especially to the members of the CCRA. I'm Kelvin Jeremiah, the president and CEO of the Philadelphia Housing Authority. And I'm pleased to be here to, of course, support the development plan for 2012 Chestnut Street. This development represents a great opportunity not only for the community, I believe, but for PHA and the developers as well. PHA has been working on this project at 2012 Chestnut with Altera for about 5 years now. The RFP for the redevelopment of the site, I believe, dates back to about 2015. In developing new affordable housing, one of our objectives here at PHA is to locate affordable units throughout the city. One reason for doing so, frankly, is to ensure that affordable housing units are not concentrated in any one particular section of the city, creating enclaves of deep poverty. PHA also believes strongly that integrating affordable housing with market rate development accomplishes many goals. Mixed income communities, especially in high opportunities areas like Center City, tend to have better economic opportunity for affordable housing residents, resulting in better socioeconomic outcomes for families with low income. When PHA disposed of 2012 Chestnut Street, I want to be clear that it was with the understanding that the final development must contain workforce affordable housing units. PHA's overall mission is to build and to maintain affordable housing in the city of Philadelphia, and we do so with either directly as a large affordable housing developer or through our partnerships with like-minded organizations, not-for-profit, philanthropic, and private partners, like we have in this partnership. PHA could have, of course, I think I had shared with the CCRA when we met last year, that we could have sold this property outright with no conditions. We could have pocketed a very nice return on that property. But we chose a different path because of the location of the property and the opportunities that it provides, opportunity to accomplish our goals in an area in which very little affordable housing exists. Over 20% or 32 units of the units in this development will be affordable, and that's something that we are incredibly supportive of, that we insisted on, and that we would fully expect that we would achieve the 20% allocation. And that was not something that was negotiable from our perspective. And we were delighted that it is in fact contained in the development agreement that we have for the redevelopment of the site. The income level will be capped at the area median income for the city of Philadelphia, and residents will pay no more than 30% of their gross household income in rent, and that includes utility costs. The development team, as you've heard from Leo, and I believe you will be hearing from John Ria, they're highly experienced, and we are confident that they will deliver a building that will be an asset to this section of Chestnut Street and all of the surrounding development and redevelopment that has happened over the last 5 years since we put out this RFP on a site that has been, frankly, an eyesore and blight in the neighborhood. This allows us to reposition the site into good use, providing good housing, good high quality housing for not only Philadelphians with low income, but for others at workforce and other income levels. This project, in partnership with Altera, I believe represents an ideal public-private partnership with partners that are committed to inclusive and equitable development. And so we're pleased that that we have this relationship that we can build these units in a way that affords an opportunity to PHA eligible clients. As you probably already know, the project has already cleared the federal hurdle and that includes the 106 review process that Leo referred to. And it has gone through a number of redesign iterations, at least 3 times now, based on the feedback from this group and from others. And I will say, from our perspective, in each succeeding iteration, it has gotten better. And I'm pleased with the input that we received from CCRA and others in the community in designing ultimately a building that I think is looks awesome. I am confident that the development team that that Leo and John, Leo and John, they're committed to getting this project done. As they mentioned, this has been underway now for 5 years. All the while, we continue to have a desperate need for affordable housing in Philadelphia. All the while, we're seeing the increasing in housing costs and housing affordability. And so the idea of getting additional units in a high market, high opportunity area is one that appeals to me and PHA, and we're looking forward to having it built and having it occupied. Repositioning that property has been a priority of mine since I came to PHA. And so I would ask for CCRA's support of this development. I think it's a good addition to the surrounding area, and I appreciate all that you have done thus far, especially the incredible inputs from the members of CCRA that were part of the task force. And with that, I guess I'll turn it over to John.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Kelvin, and it's very nice to meet many of you who I'm having a chance to meet for the very first time, although I've had an opportunity to meet some of you like Rick and Charles and Ben, and I appreciate all the fantastic work that they've done to bring us to this point and being very constructive and collaborative to hopefully execute a project here that I have a lot of excitement about. And so let me just start by saying that I'm glad I'm going after Kelvin, because every time I listen to Kelvin speak about what he envisions this project achieving is so consistent with why I'm very honored and grateful to be at the table with the Philadelphia Housing Authority and Altera in trying to bring new housing solutions to Philadelphians. So again, I'm John Rhea. I'm the founder and managing partner of Real Capital Management, which is a partner along with Altera, a 50-50 partner in the development of 2012 Chestnut Street. The firm, Real Capital Management, I set up about almost 7 years ago now, after a long career in both the public and the private sector. I actually finished a stint as chairman and CEO of the New York City Housing Authority when I decided I wanted to focus on both inclusive and affordable mixed-use development with a particular focus on urban markets in the Northeast and the Midwest. The firm is really about projects that create jobs, that drive additional affordability in high-cost markets, that focuses on inclusive development and equitable development, and it really has a particular desire and priority to do public-private partnerships where possible. So I think if you listen to what Kelvin just described, this project really does check all of those boxes, and it's one of the reasons why, again, I'm quite excited about being involved, and why our firm is quite excited about being involved here. If you look at how we became involved with the project, again, tell you a little bit more about our model. There are two particular types of development that we pursue. One is ground up new construction in infill markets, and the other is acquisition, rehab, and repositioning of kind of obsolete assets. And this project, in some ways, is both, right? Because obviously the existing building is no longer in use. It has been, unfortunately, an eyesore to the community because of its, it's unoccupied, and also because its former use is no longer appropriate for what it originally was intended to serve the Philadelphia Housing Authority from an administrative standpoint. On the other hand, it's a vacant lot next door to it as part of the site. And third, obviously, the proposal is to demo the building itself. And so it does really fit, both of the project types that we pursue in that regard. And as I said earlier, it is absolutely a public-private partnership in the sense that not only is the asset currently owned by the Philadelphia Housing Authority, but they've made a decision for their own reasons, economic and otherwise, to not quote unquote sell the asset, but to enter into a long-term ground lease to be, an economic participant in the project over time. And also obviously through various mechanisms to have a say over how the asset delivers value to their constituency and the community and citizens of Philadelphia that they look to serve. So we're very excited about that aspect of it as well. Again, we don't try to come into a community, thinking that we understand all of the dynamics there and can deliver, our vision of how to grow that community and make it healthier and to provide the kinds of things like affordability and jobs and inclusiveness that I described. And so one of the hallmarks of our model is to only do a project where we are partnered with a locally well-respected and knowledgeable developer as our partner. And that is how Altera became our partner. There's a longer backstory there, but not really for this conversation, other than to say that as I really did some homework around who we would be well served by partnering with, Leo and his team were referenced by a number of different people. And so I didn't know Leo, I did not Dinamo or Altera prior to exploring the possibility of a partnership to do some interesting work together in Philadelphia. And then we also are very focused on minority-owned enterprises being fundamentally not just our firm in the fact that we are a majority minority-owned firm, but also that our partners, whether that be on the construction side or more broadly property management, asset management, you name it, retail experiences, that there be significant participation by MWBE firms in our efforts. We're very excited about achieving that in this project. And that there's, a real connectivity to the community. And in this case, obviously, PHA is providing a significant component of that, but also working with local minority-owned firms. We believe through hiring and other things, we will also achieve those goals and objectives. So that kind of gives a real background on our firm, our philosophy, how Altera and Real Capital Management became 50-50 partners. I won't really retread anything that Leo said about the kind of the RFP process and how all that began. But there, prior to us making a decision to participate in an RFP process, there's a lot of work that goes into, do we believe we have something unique of value to bring to the table? And as we look at choosing markets to go into, there are a number of metrics that are important to our organization, and things like stratification of income, things like the need for additional affordability in markets, things like racial and economic parity. Those are things that we look at where we believe that the market is indeed endeavoring to improve on those aspects, and where our experience may actually be beneficial. And therefore Philadelphia as a market is one that we feel was a good fit, and also markets that have strong demographics, meaning strong resident populations of people of color, and particularly African Americans, and obviously Philadelphia fits that as well. And so Philly pretty quickly became a place where we wanted to develop a long-term relationship as a participant, as a corporate participant and a participant in the broader community. And again, given over the years, knowing all of the fantastic work that PHA has been able to achieve in Philadelphia, and evolving its model in terms of how it provides affordable housing to Philadelphians, and the great work that it's done in terms of innovative development and its public-private partnership approach, it made a lot of sense for us to pursue opportunities with PHA. So we looked at a number of things, and I guess in some respects, no good deed goes unpunished, in the sense that we've worked on some pretty difficult projects in other places. And I think the PHA team recognized that and thought that, given some of the history of this project, that some of the challenges that the project had faced and some of the outcomes they were trying to achieve, that they thought we might be part of a solution. And so I'll kind of start where I ended, or where I began, which is to say, we are very honored that the Philadelphia Housing Authority has given us an opportunity to be a partner in this project. We appreciate all the help that CCRA has done to help us evolve our original proposal into what we believe is a much better project today. Obviously, the original project was, larger massing, more scale, in density. There was some, cost reasons why we've evolved the project to a smaller project, but there also were some, desire to meet CCRA's goals and requirements around development and context. I go back to the comments I made about the importance of having very knowledgeable, well-respected local developers as partners. Obviously, being able to work with someone like Altera, who can help us not only understand the different zoning options and how to do that, but most importantly, how to do that in a way in which it meets the community's objectives, and not just the developer's objectives. And so in that regard, I think the partnership has been very helpful. And again, I appreciate all the effort on behalf of the community members to help bring this project to this point. So I'll pause there, and if there are any questions, happy to answer them, but thanks again for the time.
Thank you, John. You've heard a lot about the public-private partnership and the thoughts behind each of the players who have brought this proposal to you. At the outset of the presentation this evening, we spoke about the challenges of the site, the zoning constraints unusual for the CMX4 district in which we find ourselves, and really the need for some relief. And the reason that we come to you this evening seeking this relief and working collaboratively in this public-private partnership is in the best interests of the public good, we believe, with the affordability component, with the bringing life back to this block of Chestnut, particularly this side of the block of Chestnut. And to that end, the development team was very willing and appreciated the good faith efforts to date to put together draft community benefits agreements that meet the high standards of Center City Residents Association and the historic record that our civic association has for drafting these agreements. And in addition, we've worked very carefully to present a narrow but legal and reasonable working ordinance that would cover this site and allow for this project to proceed. So we hope with the blessing of CCRA that the next step would be to go to Councilman Kenyatta Johnson and ask that the draft ordinance be introduced to City Council for consideration. And I should also mention that this project absolutely will go through the civic design review process and come back to CCRA for that reason. And all those who wish to attend the civic design review would get notice. Those who are within the affected area would get it, but also I know as a member of CCRA that would go out through the e-newsletter. Speaking of the public good, the development you've heard will redevelop an underutilized parcel on an important street in our neighborhood in the city. We believe that it will add the retail uses without large curb cuts to keep Center City walkable and safe in that regard, to add affordable housing in an area where such constituencies are underserved, although I must recognize, and I take pride in the fact that CCRA is probably at the forefront of many neighborhoods in the city and working with private developers to have affordable housing components in some of the most significant large-scale projects in the city and in this neighborhood. And we should continue to do that. This project will add more eyes and ears on the street for active and safe living. And the openness of the front of the building, if you will create activity and light in an otherwise dead space. The community benefits agreement and the ordinance respectively provide for various things that you would expect in anything that's being reviewed by CCRA. Off-street trash storage, so trash storage internally to be removed off of Ionic Street, the small street to the rear. Several of the speakers have discussed the Economic Opportunity Plan, or the EOP, to ensure diversity in the construction of the project. And Kelvin Jeremiah, CEO of the Philadelphia Housing Authority, spoke directly to the affordable housing component and the fact actually that this will be a low-income housing covenant at this site that will be in the documents we hope that are approved. Sustainable design is covered in the community benefits agreement. Things like Energy Star appliances, streetscape improvements are covered. Things like granite curbs, street lighting, street trees, with an effort to preserve what's there if possible, but to have to exceed the requirements to the best of our abilities. Stormwater management, trash pickup, commercial trash pickup, minimum of 2 times per week, for example. And the developer also plans to establish a loading zone on 20th Street with city government permitting. So with that, we very much appreciate the opportunity, Janice and the CCRA task force, to speak, and the entire development team is available for questions or comments.
Adam, thank you very much. As I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, tonight, if anyone does have a question, it would be most ideal if you could put it in the chat, and Tavis Oliver will read the question back to the development team.
Okay, the first question I have is, was the building ever considered for historic designation?
I guess you would direct that, I would direct that question to Jonathan Bro, if he knows, and if not, perhaps Pip Campbell could answer.
I can take that, Janice, if you want. The answer is, I don't know for sure if it was or wasn't considered for historic designation, but part of the 108, the HUD 108 process is directly relating to the historical impact and mitigation of that impact, to the surrounding area. We had extensive historical survey done of the building and of the surrounding neighborhood. The Preservation Alliance, which is the primary advocate for historic designation in the Philadelphia area, was part of that process. And at no point in time did I hear anyone suggest that the building should be designated historically. But I don't know for sure if anyone ever proposed the idea. We certainly, as the beneficial owner, never got notice of any, application for designation, not into the Housing Authority as far as I know. And also, I would point out the building is maybe not as old as it looks on the outside. So I think the answer is no. It was looked at, but not deemed to be historically significant enough for real designation.
Thank you.
All right, next is just have a clarification that of the 161 units, 20% or 32 will be workforce housing. The rest will be market rate rentals.
That's correct. 130 market rate apartments are proposed, 32 minimum affordable apartments.
Okay. What is the square footage of the efficiency and one bedroom apartments?
Jonathan, if you can pull that up, please.
Yeah, I can answer that. So I'll go through all the units. The studios range between 350 to 420 square feet. The one bedrooms are between 500 and 730 square feet, with the majority being around 545 square feet. And the two bedrooms are 800 square feet. And a breakdown of the three types, just to clear up, there's 96 studios, 61 one bedrooms, and 5 two bedrooms.
Okay. Next, will move-ins and other loading be done from Chestnut Street? If so, has there been consultation with SEPTA about the impact on buses? Will loading be restricted to non-peak hours?
We are working very closely with the Streets Department and also with CCRA leadership in our proposed plans, which would call for loading off of 20th Street down or west, if you will, on Ionic Street to the back of the building. We hope to be able to establish a loading zone along 20th Street for that purpose. And in addition to that, the Community Benefits Agreement does call for oversight management from the building for such things. So we really are trying to avoid the types of issues that the questioner appears to have been asking about.
Next, who will own the building?
The building will be owned by a partnership between an affiliate of Altera Property Group and an affiliate of Real Capital Management. And our intention is, well, it's a ground lease, so the underlying ground is owned and will be retained by the Philadelphia Housing Authority. Our partnership will have a long-term, what's called leasehold interest in the property, and then we'll own the building itself in that same partnership. So the people on this call will be the ones who will own the building.
All right. Is your financing in place, and when do you anticipate breaking ground? And when do you anticipate full completion at opening?
It's a good question. If things go reasonably smoothly, we hope to have all the entitlements done by the end of this year, be able to break ground around this time next year, which means we'll be moving people in sometime in Q3 of 2023.
Okay, can you clarify the loading zone? No parking presently on that side of Chestnut. Will it cut into sidewalk or across the street?
Absolutely not. There's no loading zone proposed for Chestnut Street. When I referenced a potential loading zone, we are contemplating the west side of 20th Street between Ionic, which is the small street to the south, and Chestnut Street, which we know is to the north, so that we do not break up the pedestrian sidewalk of the major street, which is Chestnut, that we minimize safety issues and try to keep loading and other such things as much out of the public eye as possible.
Do you have a time frame for a demolition?
Well, demolition would be one of the first things we would do after we had the project, fully entitled and financed. So that would be when we talk about groundbreaking, really it's demolition. So a year from now.
Will the low income designation run with the building or the owner?
It will be of record as part of the, the legal documentation that governs the use of the site. So if we were to sell the building, the subsequent owner would be subject to the same low income affordability criteria.
And that's documented in the agreements with CCRA.
That's my last one.
We're very grateful for the opportunity to present this evening, and I know that the members of the development team join me in welcoming any offline communications. We want to be fully open and transparent and appreciate the process.
Thank you very much, Adam. And thank you to the entire team. I just wanted to make sure that you all know what the next steps will be. We're going to collect the comments we received tonight, or the information from tonight's meeting. But if you have additional thoughts, you have until January 20th to submit your questions on the CCRA website under the link to this meeting. We will collect those comments, and then the task force will reconvene to consider the comments. Then we will make our recommendation to the board of the CCRA, and the CCRA then will get back to the development team. But I again want to wish you all a pleasant evening, and if you have your second thoughts or any further requests for information, please don't hesitate to contact CCRA.
Thank you. Stay safe, everyone.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.